My husband died in a plane crash when I was 5 months pregnant. My mother-in-law took my stepdaughter and threw me out with an envelope of cash, saying, "End it." But the doctor, after the ultrasound, whispered, "Your husband is alive. Trust me." The frozen earth on his grave hadn't even settled when my mother-in-law pressed a thick envelope of cash into my palm and a printed clinic address on top of it. My shaking hand drifted instinctively to my belly, where David's and my baby had been growing for 5 months now. The wind cut across the cemetery in Seattle like it was trying to erase him faster than the gravediggers could. "Take it, Claire. The clinic is on Pine Avenue. They do it quietly. No questions asked." I stared at her, unable to make my mouth form words. Margaret Harrison, my mother-in-law, had the same sharp jawline as David, the same pale gray eyes, but where his face had always softened when he looked at me, hers hardened like someone tightening a screw. I can't," I whispered. "This is David's baby. Our baby." "It was David's baby," she corrected, emphasizing the past tense like a slap. "David is gone and you, Claire, cannot afford to raise a child. You barely afford yourself." Her eyes slid down my body with something close to contempt. "Be practical for once. Take the money, handle it, and then we can talk about what comes next." Behind her, 6-year-old Lily stood perfectly still in her little black coat, holding a stuffed rabbit against her chest. Lily, David's daughter from his first marriage. Lily, who had called me mom for the past 3 years. Lily, whose mother had died of leukemia before I ever met her. Lily, who now watched her grandmother hand me an envelope and didn't understand, but understood enough to look scared. "Grandma," Lily said softly. "Why are you giving Mommy money?" Margaret didn't even turn around. "Get in the car, sweetheart. We're going home." "Home?" I finally found my voice. "Margaret, I'm taking Lily home with me to our house." She laughed. A short dry bark of a laugh that turned heads among the few mourners still lingering by the plot. "Your house?" she said. "Oh, Claire, that house is in my name. David borrowed the down payment from me 7 years ago. It was a family loan. Nothing was ever transferred to him properly. You really thought a grade school teacher married into this family and automatically got a waterfront property in Magnolia?" I felt my knees soften. I'd lived in that house for 3 years. I'd painted the nursery 2 weekends ago. I'd put David's old baseball trophies on the mantel because he was sentimental about them. I'd hung my mother's quilt in our bedroom. I'd made that house mine. "That's not true," I said. "David told me the house was in both our names." "David told you a lot of things, apparently." Her voice sharpened. "By the way, I've already had Lily's things packed. She's coming with me tonight. The attorney will be in touch about custody. She's my granddaughter by blood. You are legally nothing to her." Chapter 2. The snowstorm hit Seattle harder than the forecast promised. By the time I got back to the house, a white SUV with Washington plates was parked in the driveway, and Margaret's housekeeper was carrying Lily's pink suitcase out the front door. Lily's face was pressed to the back window of the car, her small palm flat against the glass. "Mommy," she mouthed. I could see it, but couldn't hear it. I ran to the car and grabbed the door handle. It was locked. Margaret rolled down the driver's window half an inch. "Don't make a scene, Claire. It's bad for the baby you're apparently so determined to keep. She's my daughter. You can't just I can and I have. I suggest you call a lawyer in the morning. Tonight, you should focus on packing. You have until Sunday to be out of the house. I've changed the locks on the back door already. Your key still works on the front." For now, as a courtesy, the SUV pulled away. Lily's hand stayed on the glass until the car turned the corner. I stood in the driveway in my black funeral coat, hands trembling, stomach lurching. Somewhere under my ribs, the baby kicked for the first time that I could clearly feel a tiny insistent pressure, like a message from the only person left in the world who was still entirely mine. I went inside. The house smelled like David's cologne, still faint from the coat hanging on the hook. I sat down on the floor of the foyer in my coat and my funeral shoes, and I cried until I couldn't breathe. Two. I didn't sleep. I spent the night going through every drawer in David's office looking for something. Proof of ownership, a mortgage statement, a deed, anything. What I found instead was strange. His desk drawer had a false bottom. I only found it because I was yanking drawers out to empty them, and one of them weighed more than it should. Underneath, taped flat, was a second phone. Not his regular iPhone. A black cheap-looking burner phone. Still charged. Password protected. There was also a business card. No company logo, just a name, handwritten. Dr. Thomas Reed, Cascade Women's Health Clinic. If anything happens, go to him. Trust him. I stared at it for a long time. David had been a software engineer, worked for a defense contractor in Bellevue. He traveled sometimes for work, usually nothing more dramatic than Phoenix or San Diego. 2 weeks ago, he'd left for a trip to Anchorage. A routine client visit, he said. 3 days later, the State Department notified me that the small chartered plane he'd been on had gone down in the mountains east of Anchorage. No survivors. The body they returned was burned beyond recognition. We'd identified him through dental records. At least that's what the letter from the medical examiner said. I sat on the floor of my husband's office holding a business card in one hand and a burner phone in the other. And I felt something shift in my chest that was neither grief nor hope. It was something older than both. A weariness, an instinct. I didn't call the number that night. I was too tired. I put the phone and the card in the bottom of my purse and I went to bed in the dark to Dennis. The next morning, I called 3 family law attorneys from the list my friend Rachel texted me. The first 2 had long wait lists. The third, a woman named Patricia Morales, agreed to see me that afternoon. I drove to her office in my own car, or at least I tried to. The car was gone from the driveway. A tow notice was zip-tied to the mailbox. Vehicle repossessed by owner. Title held by Margaret Harrison. I took the bus. I'm a second-grade teacher. I'm not afraid of a bus. Patricia Morales listened to my whole story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally pursing her lips. When I finished, she set the pen down. Okay, here's the honest truth, Claire. If the house is legitimately in your mother-in-law's name alone, then she has the legal right to ask you to leave. 30 days is customary in Washington, but there's no automatic statutory period for a family member living rentrée. It's a gray area. About the car, same thing if the title is in her name. But I'm carrying her son's child, his baby. She can. The baby doesn't change her property rights. Now, Lily, that's different. You're the stepmother. You've been raising her for 3 years. You might have standing for a custody petition, especially if there's evidence of an existing bond and if the biological grandmother is acting in bad faith. But that's a fight. A long, expensive fight. And she has money. You don't? I nodded slowly. I felt very calm suddenly. The kind of calm that's actually the first layer of being completely underwater. What about David's assets? Bank accounts, life insurance? Patricia looked up. His employer's life insurance was paid out to whom? I don't know. I assumed me. I haven't gotten a check. She tapped her pen. You need to call his HR department tomorrow. If he updated his beneficiary recently to his mother, that's a red flag. Bring me everything you find. We can talk about contesting. I walked out of her office into the snow, feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because someone finally believed me. Heavier because I now understood the size of what was happening to me. On the bus ride back to the house, I called David's HR department from my cell phone. I was on hold for 40 minutes. When a woman named Denise finally picked up, her voice was cautious. Mrs. Harrison, I'm very sorry for your loss. I should tell you that there's been some administrative complexity around your husband's file. His beneficiary designations are currently under legal review. Under review by who? I'm not at liberty to say. I'd recommend you speak to an attorney. I hung up and stared at the bus window. Snow was falling sideways. I reached into my purse and pulled out the business card. Dr. Thomas Reed, Cascade Women's Health Clinic, I called. A receptionist picked up on the third ring. Cascade Women's Health. How can I help you? I'd like to make an appointment with Dr. Reed, please. My name is Claire Harrison. There was the briefest pause. Then the receptionist said in a slightly different tone, Dr. Reed had an opening tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Would that work, Mrs. Harrison? Yes, thank you, Mrs. Harrison. He's been expecting your call. I didn't ask her what that meant. I just said, thank you again and hung up and held the phone against my chest for a long time. Tree. Dr. Thomas Reed was in his mid-40s with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard. And the instant he walked into the exam room, he closed the door behind him and locked it. "Mrs. Harrison, thank you for coming. I want you to know that you and the baby are safe here. Would you mind if I did a quick ultrasound first? I want to make sure the stress of the past week hasn't affected anything, and then we need to talk." I lay back on the table. He put the cool gel on my belly. The room filled with the rapid galloping rhythm of my baby's heartbeat. I started to cry and I couldn't stop. Strong heartbeat, healthy position. A little boy, it looks like, if you want to know. A boy, David's son. I covered my face with my hands and sobbed. Dr. Reed waited. He handed me a tissue. He waited more. When I could breathe again, he sat down on the stool beside the exam table. "Claire, I need you to listen carefully. I was a friend of your husband's for a long time. We met in college. I was best man at his first wedding before Lily's mother passed. David and I stayed close even when I moved out here and from the clinic. I know this might sound unbelievable, but your husband is alive." I stopped breathing. 3 months ago, David came to me. He said he discovered something at his job. His company had been receiving money through a subcontractor chain that tracked back to a foreign shell corporation. He couldn't prove it yet, but he'd started keeping records. He'd also started noticing cars outside the house, men following him in grocery stores, phone clicks on his line. He was frightened. He came to me because he needed somewhere to go that wasn't connected to him on paper. "If things got worse, I whispered. Things got worse. He contacted the FBI 2 weeks ago. The agent assigned to the case advised him that if the people involved believed he was dead, he'd have a window of a few weeks to gather additional evidence safely. They arranged the flight. They arranged the identification. It wasn't David's body they gave you. The crash was real. A different passenger, a drifter already deceased, placed on that manifest. Maud Claire, he wanted to tell you. He begged them to let him tell you. They said no. They said, if you knew, they'd be able to tell by looking at you at the funeral, and so would his mother. They needed both of you to grieve authentically." I closed my eyes. The cemetery, the envelope, Margaret's cold face. It clicked into a horrible, perfect picture. "His mother," I said. "Margaret? She knew something, didn't she? Not that he was alive, but she knew he was in trouble." Dr. Reed hesitated. "We think Margaret is the inside contact at his company. She sits on the board. She approved several of the suspect's subcontractor payments. David discovered that 3 weeks before he disappeared. We believe she realized he discovered it. We believe she was preparing, which is why she moved so quickly on you the moment he was dead. She needs you out of the picture. She needs Lily under her control. And she needs the life insurance payout redirected, which it already has been. She forged a beneficiary change form 2 days after the funeral." I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of a person whose world had been turned upside down and then turned upside down again until she wasn't sure which way was up. "So my mother-in-law isn't just cruel. She's a criminal." "Yes." "And my husband isn't dead." "No." "And my baby is safe." "Yes." "And your stepdaughter is going to be safe, too. We just need to move carefully. The FBI is already watching Margaret. But your safety is what matters right now. David has a safe place for you. It's ready. I want to see him soon. I promise. But first, we get you somewhere no one can find you. To Wing." That night, Dr. Reed's sister, a quiet woman named Hannah, drove me to a small cabin outside Leavenworth, 3 hours east of Seattle. It was stocked with groceries. It had a wood stove. It had prenatal vitamins on the counter and a little basket and a note in David's handwriting. "Claire, I know you're reading this hating me. I deserve it. Please let me make it right. Please stay safe. I love you more than my life. D." I held the note against my chest and I slept for 14 hours straight for the first time in weeks. Taboo. But Lily was still with Margaret. The third morning at the cabin, I called Dr. Reed from the burner phone I'd found in David's desk. The one Hannah had shown me how to activate safely. "I can't just leave Lily there. Dr. Reed, she's 6. She doesn't understand what's happening. Her father just died. Now her stepmother vanished. Margaret is going to turn her against me or worse. Clara, the FBI asked me to tell you to be patient for 48 more hours. They're almost ready to move. 48 hours is too long. She's scared. I heard him breathe slowly on the other end. Then he said, "What are you suggesting?" I was suggesting something reckless. I knew it, but I also knew that no one was coming to save Lily unless I stood up. And I was tired, bone tired, of being a woman whom things happened to. I'm going back to Seattle. I'm going to Margaret's house. I'm going to get my daughter, Claire. I'm her mother, Ja. Easy's Hannah drove me back that afternoon. We didn't go to Margaret's house. We went to Patricia Morales' office first. I told Patricia everything, every word of it, while Hannah waited in the lobby. Patricia listened with her mouth slightly open. When I finished, she pulled out her phone. I have a friend at the Seattle PD who handles family welfare. I'm going to call her. If we can get a uniformed officer to come with you to Margaret's house, you have a far better chance of establishing an emergency custody claim. Stepmother of 3 years, only caregiver during the marriage. No bond with the grandmother before last week. You're her mother in every way that counts. Let me make some calls. By 6 p.m., I was sitting in the front seat of a Seattle police cruiser driven by Officer Maya Chen with Patricia Morales following in her own car. We pulled into Margaret's long, expensive driveway in Laurelhurst. The porch light was on. I could see the flicker of a television through the living room curtains. I rang the doorbell. My heart was a drum. Margaret answered in silk pants and a cashmere sweater. Her smile evaporated the moment she saw the officer. "Claire, what is this, Miss Harrison?" Officer Chen said politely, "We're here on a welfare check regarding a minor child, Lily Harrison, and to facilitate a conversation between Miss Claire Harrison and the child. We don't have a custody order yet, but Miss Harrison has been the child's primary maternal caregiver for 3 years, and she's entitled to check on her." "This is harassment," Margaret said. Her voice had gone thin. "Ma'am, please step aside." From upstairs, I heard a small voice. "Mommy." And then the sound of small, fast feet on the stairs. Lily hit me at full speed, and I nearly lost my balance. She buried her face in my coat and cried in that silent, shuddering way she did when she was trying to be brave. I dropped to my knees on the marble floor and held her and said her name over and over. Margaret was still talking. Officer Chen was no longer really listening. She was on her radio. And that's when the FBI came through the door. 2 agents, a man and a woman, badges on their belts, very calm, very professional. They asked Margaret to step into the living room. They asked if she knew a man named Gregory Waller. They asked about wire transfers to a shell corporation registered in Panama. They asked about a forged insurance beneficiary designation. Margaret sat down very slowly on her own couch. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked at me across the room. I was still on the floor holding Lily. For a long moment, her face did something complicated. Then it hardened again. "Claire, whatever they've told you, it's not what you think." "Margaret," I said quietly. "I know my husband is alive." Her face went white. The agents exchanged a glance. "Ma'am," the woman agent said, "we're going to need you to come with us." Tambalitos. I stayed at Patricia's house that night with Lily. We slept in the guest room in one bed. Lily's head tucked under my chin, one of her small hands resting on my belly. At one point, half asleep, she said, "Is there really a baby in there?" "Yes, sweetheart, your little brother." "Good," she said. "We're going to need more people on our team." I laughed and I cried and the baby kicked and Lily felt it and squealed. And for the first time in weeks, I understood that I was going to survive this. End quote. David came home a week later, thinner, shadowed under the eyes, a scar above his right eyebrow that hadn't been there before. He came up the walk of Patricia's house because our house was still evidence. And when I opened the door, he dropped to his knees on the porch and pressed his forehead against my belly and apologized for so long I had to ask him to stop. I didn't forgive him right away. He didn't expect me to. We spent the next few months in therapy together and separately, and I said a lot of hard things out loud that I needed to say. He listened to all of them. The FBI's investigation unspooled slowly. Margaret was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, insurance fraud, and obstruction of justice. She was denied bail. The Shell Corporation traced back to a criminal enterprise that had been laundering money through defense subcontractors for nearly a decade. David's testimony was central. 7 people went to prison, including 2 of Margaret's longtime friends from the country club who I had served coffee to at Thanksgiving. The house was eventually sold. The money went into a trust for Lily and for the baby. We moved to a smaller place, a craftsman bungalow in Ballard with a maple tree in the front yard and a creaky third step on the porch. It was ours, both of our names on the deed, I insisted. Benjamin David Harrison was born in late April. He came out red-faced and furious and 8 pounds even. David cut the cord. Lily was in the room holding a stuffed giraffe she'd picked out herself at the hospital gift shop. When she held her baby brother for the first time, she looked up at me and said, very seriously, "He's on the team now, Mom." And I don't know who reads stories like this or why. Maybe you've been the woman in the cemetery with an envelope in your hand and nowhere to sleep that night. Maybe you're still there. Maybe you're watching someone you love be there and you don't know how to help. I don't have a clean moral. The world has people like Margaret in it. And sometimes they share your last name. And sometimes they hold papers in their drawer that say the roof over your head is theirs. And sometimes they will hand you a clinic address on the day you bury your husband and call it kindness. But the world also has Dr. Reeds in it. Patricia Morell is Officer Chen's small daughters with stuffed rabbits who know exactly who their mother is without being told. Husbands who come back on their knees. Sons who arrive in April on time, healthy, ready. I thought I was a woman, things happened too. It turned out I was a mother. And a mother, it turns out, is the most dangerous thing in the world to underestimate. I got my daughter back. I got my husband back. I got my son. I got my own name back on my own front door. And somewhere in a federal facility in eastern Washington, my mother-in-law is serving year 2 of an 11-year sentence. And I don't visit and I don't write. And when Lily asks about her, I tell her the truth in pieces small enough for her to carry. Some people you bury, some people bury themselves. Mine was the second kind. And my family, my real family, the one I fought for, the one that fought back for me, we're still here, still warm, still whole, still on the team.